with how good the Vikings looked in week one, I think it was a combination of a couple of things. Do I think that the Vikings are going to be a playoff team this year? No. Do I think that they're going to be pretty competitive? Yes. I also think the New York Giants are one of the worst teams in all of football. That offense was in disarray. Offense looked like a mess. Daniel Jones is a straight up joke. Our Giants hosted Chat Sports has just been in shambles all throughout this week. And in Daniel Jones's last 8 games, he has actually thrown more touchdowns to the other team than he's thrown to his team in the New York Giants. So he's really bad. But with this Minnesota team, I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL. We've seen a long sample size here of how he maximizes his quarterbacks, regardless of who it is, whether it be Kirk Cousins, who was playing the best football of his career last year before tearing his Achilles, in my opinion. Josh Dobbs comes in, especially that game against Atlanta, where he had just joined the team after the trade from Arizona, and he was able to play really well for a short stretch there. Nick Mullins, I know he's always prone to turning the football over, but he looked pretty good with Kevin O'Connell in his ear. Jaron Hall got some snaps last year for the Vikings, and he was certainly rocky. But the point here being is that Kevin O'Connell is a really good offensive-minded head coach. And then Brian Flores is one of the top defensive coordinators in the NFL, and I'm sure we'll talk about that throughout the show here today because he gave this Niners offense fits and a lot of problems last year. So I just think that Minnesota is a really well-coached team, both sides of the football. New York is not. At the end of the day, Sam Darnold, I think, is Sam Darnold, and Minnesota is not going to be a playoff team this year. But when you compare the coaching of Minnesota to the coaching of the New York Jets, I don't think that Robert Saleh is a head coach in this league. I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the top coaches in the league, and I think that's kind of what Nick Bosa was pointing to, just the differences in how both of these teams are coached.
I like the Niners to win this game. I think I think Hargrave and Collins inside could really dominate. Minnesota center Garrett Bradbury and their right guard Ed Ingram allowed 10 pressures combined in that Giants game in week one. And I just see a different version of Hargrave. Hargrave to me seems like he's got a new focus this year. Collins has been a revelation in a short amount of time. I think that's the Niners' main advantage. If you're gonna win inside, pressure Darnold in his face. I think that's a lead towards multiple turnovers, and I think that's why I like the Niners, especially in this game off defensively. Hargrave and Collins in that matchup. How do you see the Niner D against the Minnesota offense? Because there's an awful lot of people that are suggesting that Minnesota will just put Justin Jefferson in the slot again, try to get him ISO'd on Devondre Campbell and just ruin the Niners' day. What do you think the Viking offense is going to look like?
One of the key matchups in this game to me is the Vikings offensive line against this revamped 49ers defensive line. And I thought that Nick Sorensen called a really good game. Fred Warner said after the game on Monday Night Football that it was a flawless game plan for him. And outside of that long drive in which Aaron Rodgers looked to be the vintage Aaron Rodgers, and then on that free play on the penalty, I thought that this Niners defense was clicking on all cylinders. I loved what I saw from Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave. Leonard Floyd gives Nick Bosa an edge rusher on the opposite side of that defensive line of scrimmage that I don't think he's had with the 49ers since being drafted in 2019. The twitch, the bend, the quickness, the relentless pursuit, the hustle. He really popped to me. This Niners linebacking core continues to ball out. They were able to force 2 turnovers against the Jets. This secondary was also really good. I mean, Aaron Rodgers didn't even look the direction of Charvarius Ward, and then he did throw and target Deommodore Lenoir and Isaac Yiadom. Lenoir 10 times, Yiadom 4 times, and I thought that both of those cornerbacks really held up well, and both had 2 really big pass breakups. The Lenoir PBU, which led to the Demetrius Flanagan fouls interception, and then the Isaac Yiadom pass breakup on Garrett Wilson on that critical 4th down. But when it comes down to this game between the Niners and Minnesota, I'm really focusing in, as I mentioned, on the Niners defensive line against the Vikings offensive line for a couple of reasons. Ed Ingram is the right guard for Minnesota. PFF gave him a 9.3 pass blocking grade against the Giants. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, and he owned him last week in week 1. Ingram allowed 1 sack and an NFL worst 6 pressures in that game. And of the 69 guards in the NFL who saw the field in week 1, Ingram was rated last. And then Garrett Bradbury also really struggled. He had an offensive overall rating of 44.8. And given what I saw from Malik Collins, I think that he can really be a disruptor in this game and one of the X factors for this Niners team all throughout the year. And I expect Javon Hargrave to bounce back. And then you know what Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa are going to be able to give you. Nick Bosa is one of the top edge rushers in the game, and then Leonard Floyd has been a model of consistency where in the last 4 years, he's had 9+ sacks in every single season. And think about the quarterback who this Niners defense is going up against. Did Sam Darnold start that game against a bad Giants team 12 of 12? Yes, he did. And it was tied for the best start to a game in Vikings history. Was he's slinging the rock, and did he make a couple of really nice throws, which were tight window throws? No doubt about it. Did Nick Sorensen complement his arm talent? Yeah, because Sam Darnold has always had arm talent. But what's the consistent theme with Sam Darnold throughout his career? He's prone to turning the football over, and when you get pressure on him, he kind of panics a little bit, and he will put the ball in harm's way, especially if you can penetrate the middle of the line of scrimmage. And that's where Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave come in, because if you blur that sight line for Sam Darnold, he's just not going to be able to see the field all that well. That's when he panics and he can throw picks. So I think that Collins and Hargrave can eat up, and I think this Niners defensive line in general can have a big day.
You know, it's funny. Last year, they blitzed Kirk Cousins 26% of his dropbacks, and he carved them up. He completed 77%. He had a 107 passer rating, threw for almost 400 yards. They blitzed Rodgers in week 1 only 9% of the time, but they got pressure on him 20% of the time, 27% of the time. You know, I'm looking at some of the numbers from the blitz for Darnold in week 1, Chase. Darnold was excellent against the blitz in week 1. He went 5 of 6 with 2 touchdowns and 3 first down passes as well. What do you think? I mean, obviously, Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa combined for 18% pressure rate. They were the only 2 guys to get pressures, though, on that 49er line. Darnold held the ball at the 8th highest rate. So that kind of tells me that he wasn't necessarily processing that all that fast. What do you think? He was pressured on 42% of his dropbacks against the Giants. The Vikings O-line in pass block win rate from week 1 was 24th in the NFL. What do you think? Do you think the Niners will, rush Darnold with 4 and drop 7, or do you think they'll send some pressure up the middle and try to move him off the spot? I just think that Sam Darnold does not deal well with pressure in his face, and if you allow him to establish a rhythm and don't pressure him in his face, I don't think you're putting your best foot forward defensively. I don't like that plan. I like pressuring him, and I think if you do, maybe he'll throw you 2 picks.
Yeah, and the Giants let him find that rhythm last week. That's a big reason why he went 12 of 12. And Kevin O'Connell, I thought, did a good job of allowing Sam Darnold to kind of spread the ball out, and he was able to catch fire because had some easy completions, and then he started to gain some confidence, and he threw the ball downfield. You know, if I'm San Francisco, I'm ideally trying to get home with 4 at first, and then I'm keeping in mind that maybe in some of those critical situations, that's when you send some pressure. On that one Jets touchdown drive, not the one where Aaron Rodgers got the free play and found Allen Lazard. On a couple of those third downs, Nick Sorensen did dial up some pressure. Sometimes they fake some of those looks, and Aaron Rodgers was able to find success. Sam Darnold isn't Aaron Rodgers, though. So if I'm San Francisco, I'm rushing 4 to see if I can get home against a bad offensive line, because then your secondary can feast. The other thing, too, is that Jordan Addison is probably not going to play in this game. He suffered an ankle injury in the preseason, and then last week against New York, he suffered an ankle injury to his other ankle. And so Minnesota is pretty light on skill position talent as far as pass catchers go. Justin Jefferson is probably the best wide receiver in the NFL, but if Jordan Addison can't go, Jalen Naylor is a speed burner who elevates to number 2. TJ Hawkinson is not going to be available for the first 4 weeks because he's coming off a torn ACL and MCL. So they're a little bit thin at that tight end position too, which is why I kind of have the strategy. See if you can get home with 4 against a bad offensive line. You combine that with Minnesota not really having a lot of weapons at the receiver spots and tight end spots. And then if you need to make adjustments from there, that's when you start to make adjustments, and maybe you send some blitzes toward Darnold's way.
What's your biggest concern going into this game? I mean, some people say, well, I have no concerns. The 49ers are playing great. The Vikings are not on their level. 49er throwback in the chat says, my worry is Kyle Shanahan. He's not fared that well against Brian Flores. It does seem to add up that it would favor the Niners in a lot of ways offensively. Minnesota plays a ton of zone. They played 83.7% too high safety looks against the Giants in week one. They rank third in the NFL in zone coverage rate so far. Brock Purdy's the NFL's most efficient quarterback against zone coverage, according to the numbers. What do you think? If you have a primary concern in this game, what would it be?
It's just so weird that the Niners haven't been able to win in Minneapolis since 1992. That's 7 straight losses for San Francisco on the road against the Vikings. It's one of those sports statistics that doesn't really make any sense to me. And when they've gone there, they just haven't looked like the same team. Obviously, those previous matchups, all of the teams were different. But I think back to that game last year, and you still have Kyle Shanahan calling the plays and designing the offense for San Francisco, and you have Brian Flores doing the same thing for the Minnesota Vikings. And you think about that game against Minnesota, when the Niners turn the football over early, or they're not able to find their rhythm early, it kind of just throws off Kyle Shanahan's game plan. And that's exactly what happened in the Super Bowl against Kansas City, where the Niners are driving down the field, the Christian McCaffrey fumble happens, and it's almost like that sets the tone for the rest of the game. So in that game last year, the Niners lost to Minnesota 22-17. They were able to pick Kirk Cousins off on the first drive. Mooney Ward made a really good play. They're driving down the field, and then Christian McCaffrey fumbles at the 15-yard line. That takes 3 points off the board. Later in that first half, Jake Moody missed a field goal. That's 6 points off the board. And then we all know the infamous Steve Wilks zero blitz call with no safety help, in which Ward almost had another interception against Jordan Addison. And right before halftime, Minnesota is able to score that 60-yard touchdown because there was no safety help beyond Ward there. Momentum shifting to the Vikings. Brock Purdy in that game threw 2 interceptions, one of which ended the game. Kirk Cousins had one of the best primetime games of his career, 35 of 45 for 378 yards. The Niners did not have Deebo Samuel or Trent Williams in that game, and I do think that's significant, but Brian Flores really called a defensive masterclass, I thought, in that game, and what he did was very interesting. The 49ers averaged 1.53 yards after contact per rush last year against Minnesota. That was their lowest mark of the 2023 season, according to True Media. And what Brian Flores did, he had a lot of 6-man fronts where he played 3 defensive tackles, and Minnesota tried to clog the interior gaps. San Francisco didn't really have an answer. Now, I do think that there are ways to mitigate that and to beat that. First of all, Jordan Mason will run right through your face. And I think that that could help San Francisco in this game. And we'll see what happens with the status of Christian McCaffrey. I also think that you can have some misdirection going away from the defensive line that try to get out to the perimeter. And then there are some quick hitters that I think that Brock Purdy can throw, forcing Minnesota's defense to kind of spread out as compared to stacking the box with 6 men along that line of scrimmage. So for me, the biggest concern is how Minnesota was really able to fluster this Niners offense last year. And it really comes down to turnovers. If San Francisco can play a clean game, they're so much better than Minnesota. But it's a short week. They have the rest disadvantage. They played on Monday night. They haven't beat Minnesota in Minneapolis since 1992. And it's an early game in this 10 a.m. Pacific window. And Brian Flores is just a really good defensive mind. But this Niners team, they really have no excuse to lose to Sam Darnold and an inferior opponent. They should be able to learn from last year, play a clean brand of football, keep that in mind. And I think that they should win this game and will win this game and move to 2-0.
It's funny. John Lynch went on KMBR this morning and was talking about Christian McCaffrey. And he said that, obviously McCaffrey's got the Achilles/calf issue. And he kind of contradicted what Shanahan said. Shanahan was asked if, IR was a possibility. And he's like, no, it's not a possibility. We haven't considered that. Lynch said that they're considering all possibilities and that IR is still an option. The Niners are taking kind of the long range view with CMC. He did practice on Thursday. He looked good in practice, but he's got this Achilles tendonitis, and obviously the Achilles. Anytime you hear Achilles, you're thinking very, very serious. Um, what do you think? I mean, I don't think he's going to play in this game, but what do you, if you were in charge, what would your plan be with CMC? What is the best plan to navigate, this season and this injury, and to do right by your team and do right by the player? I mean, to me, this could go an awful lot of ways. This is one of the best players in pro football. I personally don't want to see him at all until week 6 or 7, because I look at the season as 6 game kind of increments. So it's like weeks 1 through 6. Okay. I definitely don't want to see him in weeks 1 through 6. Weeks 13 or weeks 7 through 13. I don't want to see him there either. But you know what? If he's okay and he's feeling all right and they've got a key matchup and they think they need him, fine. But in my world, I'd rather save him for that third stretch, that third 6-week stretch, which is more like week 14 through the end of the year, which, in week 16 and 17 might be, or week 17 might be a day off, depending on the record. I don't know. I mean, I would not allow McCaffrey to play now. I would keep going with Mason, and that would be my plan. I don't want to see McCaffrey until like Thanksgiving, because I just don't really, I think likely if you said I have no idea what the status of his Achilles is. And, we've had some people speculate it's only like a 5% chance that he would rupture it. Other people saying it could go at any minute. I don't know what the status is. All I know is it's a very serious injury. It's a career-altering injury for a running back, even today in 2024 with modern medicine. And I just don't want to risk him. Last year, you put him out there a ton. You got other backs. Run your other backs. Put him out there at the end of the year. I wouldn't use him unless I lost some games and needed him. What plan would you have with CMC?
Look, this Niner season in 2024 isn't about a week 2 game against Minnesota. It's not about your fantasy team that nobody cares about except for you. This is about the long game, right? This is about winning a Super Bowl. And Christian McCaffrey greatly improves your chances of winning a Super Bowl. And over the last year and a half since the Niners fleeced Carolina and made that trade, Christian McCaffrey's production has been incredible. His value to this team has been invaluable. And he's been probably the most valuable skill position player in the NFL. But his usage has also been incredibly high. And keep in mind that when the Niners traded for McCaffrey, there were some concerns because the previous 2 years after he was an All-Pro with Carolina, he barely played. I think he played 10 combined games in 2 years prior to coming to the Niners. So there is a little bit of an injury history. But also just think about the implications here, right? He led the NFL in touches last year, more than 2,000 all-purpose yards. The Niners used him a lot. To use a basketball term, if it was like a usage rate, it would be like James Harden with the Houston Rockets back several years ago when he always had the ball in his hands. With Christian McCaffrey's running ability, pass catching ability, the Niners have used him so much, and clearly it's taken a toll because last year he suffered that calf injury in week 17. And I don't think that he was the same player after that. Was he still great? For sure. But he was definitely impacted by that injury. And now the calf injury has come back. And this offseason, you signed him through 2027 on that contract extension. You gave him some guaranteed money. You upped his average annual value. And for him, he's 28 years old. If he suffers a torn Achilles, that does alter his career, as you mentioned. And it really prohibits the Niners from a cap standpoint. Because if you're paying this running back all this money and he's not able to play for you, that hits you hard, right? So you got to be safe about this. And John Lynch said this morning, like, some days it's really good and he feels fine. Then it flares up. Well, what if it's Sunday and it flares up and that Achilles is feeling a little bit weak and then it just goes? Now, with San Francisco's offense, we've seen with Kyle Shanahan, you can win with any type of running back. That's not taking anything away from CMC, but any type of running back that's been in the system has had success, from Matt Breida to Raheem Mostert to Elijah Mitchell to Christian McCaffrey last week with Jordan Mason. That's the point, is that this is such a run friendly system that the Niners can find success with any type of running back who's back there. But Christian McCaffrey adds a completely different dimension to this team. And then lastly, like, I see where McCaffrey's coming from. He wants to play. Think about the household that he grew up in. His dad was a Super Bowl champion. His dad was an all-pro. You think about McCaffrey's craft as a football player, the footwork, the in-depth and nuanced and complex sprinting workouts that he does. You think about what his dad had him do when he was a kid, where he didn't let him wear jeans on game days because it would wear and weigh his legs down. He didn't let McCaffrey squint because it would take energy away. He had him go to bed by 7:30. If he got tackled by his jersey, he would be grounded. Like, that's the household that Christian McCaffrey grew up in. This dude loves ball, and I give him a lot of credit for that. And he wants to be on the field because he feels as though he has to serve his teammates, serve this organization. But at the same time, you found success with Jordan Mason. This year is not about week 2. It's a calf and Achilles injury. And if that goes wrong, that's catastrophic. So I'm with you. I would err on the side of caution here. I'm not going to put a timeline on it. Now, obviously, if you put him on IR, there's a 4-week timeline there. But I'm just waiting to see, hey, this calf hurt you last year. It flared up again. Now you have Achilles tendonitis. Let's just rest you and shut you down so that you can get 100% healthy.
How about Afonga? He's got the ACL. Lynch said this morning on KMBR, he's getting really close to returning. He said, I think he's ready, but I don't know if it will be this week. It sounds like if this were Super Bowl Sunday, he could go, but because they just, want to be extra precautions. I don't think we're going to see Afonga. I really I think he's a couple weeks off still. That's my guess.
Yeah, and there's no reason to play Talanoa Hufanga either for some of the same things that I mentioned with Christian McCaffrey. This year is not about week 2. With Hufanga, you're talking about an all-pro player who you can use as a chess piece on this defense, who can impact the game at all 3 levels of the defense, and he's really special. But what happened with Hufanga last year? He kind of had that knee injury, that Baker cyst in his knee, and then the ACL gave out. And he tore his ACL. So that's a good example of, if you try to play through these things, can you get through these injuries and can you still be on the field? For sure. But there's a risk of further injury. And with Talanoa Hufanga, you think about the safety spot for San Francisco. Jair Brown's a really good player. George Odom had a really good camp, and I thought that he flashed, honestly, in moments against the New York Jets. Nick Sorensen has been very complimentary of him all throughout training camp and saying, look, he's not just a special teams player. Like, this guy can play the safety spot. They elevated Tracy Walker, who started more than 40 games in his NFL career from the practice squad, and he's played in nearly 80 games in his NFL career. So they didn't put him on short-term IR, so he's occupying a roster spot technically. So you want him back from a roster management standpoint within the first 4 weeks, but give this another week and then you kind of reassess that over the next couple of weeks, because I really think Hufanga, you adding him to this defense, the ball hawk that he is, the instinctual player that he is, his ability to generate turnovers and the versatility that he has, he could take this defense to another level.
We got a couple of chats here, starred chats. We got Surf Bone says, how's the KMBR gig? Oh, it's going good. Check it out Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. on KMBR radio or on KMBR's YouTube page. And we talk Niner football, and we had Pete Bursich on, the color commentator of the Vikings this week, and a bunch of different Viking people. And of course, I also do 49er Focus on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And I'll be on tomorrow for that. And of course, pregame as well. So yeah, it's going very, very well. Jerry Schetzel says, seems like there's more steam for Trey Lance to Miami. Well, that was the other question I was going to ask you. Miami looks like they suffered an injury with Tua. Should the Niners trade Dobbs to Miami for a pick with Tua hurt? I think if I was Miami, I'd probably rather have Lance than Dobbs, but Dobbs might be more ready to play right now than Lance and win right now. I don't know. What do you think about Miami, and what's the latest on Tua? I mean, I'm not a Tua fan. I think Tua is a a bust. I really do. I think he's fragile. I think he's injury prone. I don't think he reads coverage all that well. I don't think he processes all that well. He's very accurate. He's athletic, but I'm not a Tua fan. I don't know where you are on Tua, but what did you think of his injury last night?
So, yeah, let me just say, like, that was awful to watch last night, considering his concussion history. He now has 3 confirmed concussions over the last 3 years. He had the 2 consecutive back during the 2022 season, none in 2023, and then the play that happened last night. I was sick to my stomach when it happened. At the same time, like, let's talk about Tua as a football player. I don't think that he was worth that $200 million contract. He has never won a big game that I've ever watched in a prime time or big spot. He can't win games in under 50-degree weather. Anytime that he takes on a good team, he always struggles. Last night, he threw 3 picks. I'd say 2 of them were awful throws. The one was mistimed on that first possession of the game, and I don't think it was really on him. But the question that kind of came to me last night when I was watching Tua before that injury, what does he do that's special? I don't think he does anything that's special. He doesn't have a big arm. He can't run. He's not mobile. He's not overly athletic. He can't beat quality teams. He puts the ball in harm's way.
That is highly accurate. He was billed to be highly accurate. That's what they said he was.
And I don't really think
that was what was explained as his skill proposition. Very accurate.
Yeah, and I don't think that he's all that accurate. Now, he puts up these huge numbers, and everybody thinks, oh, he's so legit. He's so legit. I had a coworker try to tell me this past week that Tua is much better than Brock Purdy. And I said, hold on, I thought you knew ball, but I don't think you know ball. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, I just don't see what he does that is special. I think he's very overrated. And while I feel bad about the concussion, look, when you sign a $200 million contract and you have concussion issues, what are you doing lowering your head trying to bulldoze DeMar Hamlin? You just can't do that. And you have to keep yourself safe. So it sucks for Miami. It sucks for Mike McDaniel, who has also really struggled against really good teams. They have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a really good running game. I think their offensive line stinks. I don't think their defense is all that special, but they're certainly a win now team. So does Josh Dobbs become a trade option? Probably. Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill. Those are probably the other quarterbacks I'm looking at if I'm Miami.
Okay. Couple thoughts here. One, Brad Allen is officiating the game. I don't know if you saw this today. Brad Allen is officiating the Niner Viking game. Home underdogs are 30-18-1 against the spread, 61% when Allen's crew is officiating. His crew calls an NFL low 39.5% of third down penalties on the home team since 2021. The crew has also called the highest percentage of pre-snap penalties since 2001. Do you ever look at the officials and I don't know, I always hate officiating talk, but when you see officiating trends like this, it's kind of equal parts annoying and disturbing.
Definitely. And I know for Niner fans out there, the officiating is a very sore subject, considering what has happened in the 2 Super Bowls for the Niners in recent memory, both against Kansas City, where Kansas City has gotten away with a lot of holding calls, and the whistle is certainly, I think, sided a little bit with the Chiefs. And it is a weird trend and weird statistic that under his watch, these home underdogs have the record that they do that you just mentioned. But for me, look, is it an early game on the West Coast for San Francisco? Yes. Do they have the rest disadvantage because they played on Monday? For sure. You're a better team than Minnesota. And if you play a clean brand of football, you should be able to win this game. It shouldn't be close. I think that the Niners should be able to cover the spread and win by a touchdown. It shouldn't come down to officiating. It should come down to your game plan. It should come down to your execution. It should come down to you being one of the most talented teams in the National Football League. And you're going up against Sam Darnold. There is no excuse to lose against Sam Darnold. We could talk about how Brian Flores has had Kyle Shanahan's number and how last year his defense flustered this Niners offense. Why was that partially, though? It's because the Niners turned the ball over on the first drive, missed another field goal, and Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions. If you don't do that, you should be able to win this game, and the officials shouldn't matter, although it is going to be a raucous environment there at US Bank Stadium.
If George Kittle gave you a pair of shoes, would you wear them? Would you wear them? George Kittle gave me, Grant, and probably 10 or 12 other media people shoes. He made fun of our shoe game, and then he gave us shoes. What do you think? So I've had other people, like Dieter and I got into this last night. Dieter thinks that it's like a definite faux pas to it's a credibility killer to wear shoes given to you by George Kittle, who criticized our shoes and then bought us all brand new shoes. He bought us some Nike Air Forces. They're all white. I'm not wearing them today. But they also have CanBR on the tongue. So they're dual. I'm not only are they from George with a note. Here basically is the note. I brought the note. I think I thought you'd get a kick out of this. So George sends us a note, and it says, "Figured I could lend a hand in helping you up your sneaker game, George Kittle." And sent a bunch of the media people who are regulars pairs of tennis shoes. John Lund, I showed it to John Lund. He's like, Kittle's a Nike guy. I bet you didn't even pay for those shoes. Grant did a video about it. I'm one of those guys that I always believe your credibility is tied to what comes between, what's going on here between your ears. And also, do you take tough stances? Do you have sacred cows? Do you go after it? Are you aggressive? Or are you one of these guys that just shows up to put a hot dog in his back pocket and get a bunch of free food and glad hand everybody? But in a way, I'm part of the glad handing because I'm taking shoes from Kittle, who I'm supposed to be very objective about. If somebody buys you shoes, would it be hard for you to be objective?
So I'm excited to have this conversation, but I do have this question. How did he know your shoe size? How did he know everybody's shoe sizes?
It's funny. I think one of the media people might have asked a couple weeks ago, "Hey, by the way, just for the heck of it, what size shoe do you wear?" And I said, 13s. Okay. So I wear size 13 shoes. And sure enough, they were in 13s.
I wear 13s as well. So a couple of things here. I studied journalism at Temple University in Philadelphia, great journalism program. And when you enter the journalism school, they always teach you have to be objective. You never take gifts because you are supposed to be a journalist. I'm kind of past like that old school Jay type of mentality. I think we're in a new era now. And I think that people crave authenticity. They crave thought-provoking conversations. They want to be informed, but they want to be entertained. And I think back to some of the people that I've loved watching and listening growing up. And you think about some of the people who are popular now. Like, I love Colin Cowherd because he makes me think. I loved SVP growing up because he was entertaining, he was very relatable, and he made me think. You think about Pat McAfee's aura right now. He's kind of that frat bro, new school, brings a lot of positive energy party guy. And then you think about some of the podcasts that are blowing up right now. Pardon my take. They're relatable, they're funny, and they're not old school Jays where they're in a suit as a news anchor and they're talking like this in such a robotic tone. Like, I'm just not about that anymore. So I think that it's fine that George Kittle gave you shoes. I think that you can wear them if you want. I watched Grant's video and he said that these are collector's items. I'm not going to wear them and mess them up because they're going to be worth something at some point. I also think Air Force Ones are nice kicks. So George Kittle, if you're watching and you want to put the 49ers report on some Air Force Ones, I would wear those for sure. And I think that they would look very stylish. And I think, Larry, that you should wear them and not worry about the credibility, because George Kittle knows that if he misses a block or he drops a touchdown, you're going to talk about it because that's your job. But it's also a shout out to him because he did something thoughtful. He did something fun. he started this whole thing. He went out of his way to criticize the shoe game for the media members. And I'm not going to lie, some of the people in the media, they do not have swagger. They don't have a good shoe game. And you got to look good, feel good. You got to have a little bit of swagger and confidence. So George Kittle's just trying to help the people out. And at the end of the day, he's living up to the name of him being the people's tight end.
The only thing I'll say is the only thing that's annoying is I like a little contentiousness. I like a little red ass. I like a little, we're in this world that's like, somebody, he's ripping our shoe game. I like that. I like him ripping our shoe game. Instead, there were people who were like, how much money he makes compared to you guys. And
so those
it's
are the
just
big
not right that he's criticizing your,
Yeah,
I mean, if he was saying that we all did, if he's making fun of my Chevy Tahoe as he's rolling by in a Hummer, whatever. If he's got
look at you driving,
he's got a Lambo
lemon
or something, and he's ripping my Tahoe. Now maybe I'm kind of pissed. But if he's just saying, "Hey, man, you guys," I mean, it's like, does nobody have a sense of humor anymore? Everybody's got to be like, "I am damaged. I'm offended. I'm offended that a rich guy was ripping people who aren't as rich for not having nice shoes." And it's like, get over it.
I
totally get over it.
I totally agree.
Come on. We need more mean-spirited things in our world, not less.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I've been in the crosshairs on social media for sharing opinions, for just being opinionated. Look, here's the thing. We are all different and we're all shaped by our own experiences. We're allowed to have different conversations and opinions, and it's okay if people don't disagree with you. Do you agree with everybody in your family? Do you agree with all of your friends? No. So stop being sensitive and stop getting butthurt over George Kittle clearly joking about something, and have a damn sense of humor. And I'll make the argument, if you're covering the San Francisco 49ers, if you're a member in the media, you should be presentable. I don't care if you're on camera or not. If you're going to the Niners facility with these dusty kicks that are all muddied up, be better, look more presentable, and have some nice clothes to look good. George Kittle's not criticizing you for your salary. He's clearly just joking around and saying, look.
Yeah, he's having fun.
You got to make a fashion
come on, dude.
statement.
I mean, it comes right down to it. With my friends, if you came out, Chase, we go to a game. We saw each other at the Super Bowl. We wanted to get together Super Bowl week. It didn't happen. But let's say we'd gotten together Super Bowl week and it had been my friends and your friends and we're in Vegas and we're partying. Dude, if you're around my friends rip the shit out of me. I rip the shit out of them. That's what being a friend in our friend group is. We rip each other. It's a sign of
endearment and love.
Endearment. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like you rip the guy, the people you really don't like, you just ignore. You ignore. You don't, but your friends, you rip them to death. So I don't know. If I'm around my buddies and they're not ripping me, something's wrong. Something is wrong, and I'm like, I'd rather be ripped than and have a room full of friends than sit there and act offended because George Kittle. And then what? So some people are like, oh, so George then had to go buy you guys shoes to make up for the fact that he ripped you. And it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, he shouldn't, if he felt obligated to buy us shoes because he ripped us, then I don't like that. I mean, I'm glad that he bought his shoes and I'll wear them and whatnot. But I mean, come on, man.
It's clearly a bit.
You don't need to apologize. I'd rather you keep ripping. And by the way, Rock Eastwood, you're wrong on this one. Larry definitely owns a pair of Crocs. Now, I don't own Crocs. I have a bunch of shoes, but I don't own Crocs. I wouldn't mind a pair of Crocs. I think Crocs are kind of comfortable. Aren't they supposed to be comfortable?
Yeah, I have a pair of Canes. They're like athletic Crocs, and I love them. I wear them all the time. Part of the reason I love hanging out with my buddies, though, back to your point, is because we bust each other's balls, and you got to keep everybody on edge. I love the chat sports work culture because I used to work in television as a reporter. I hated how buttoned up and old school it was. Well, we've always done it this way as journalists, so we're never going to change. No, in life, you got to adapt and evolve. You got to eat or get eaten. And sometimes you got to have some fun. Exactly. You have to have a sense of humor. I think sense of humor is one of the best qualities in a person that anybody can have. You can joke around. You can make fun. Don't take yourself so seriously. And also, don't value the opinions of those who you don't care about and those people who don't care about you. Have some fun. George Kittle clearly went about this tongue-in-cheek. He's at the press conference. He's having fun with everybody, saying, look, you got to up your shoe game a little bit.
Right.
And then he went out and bought people's shoes as a joke. If people are taking this so seriously, this is a millionaire criticizing all of these hardworking journalists. Get over yourself, man.
Seriously. Put a fucking sock in it. Please. WK says you should show up to the next presser in bunny slippers.
Nope, that would be a good bit by you. That'd be a good bit by you.
That would. Yeah. Maybe the next Kittle, I gotta sit there. Maybe I'll just go bare feet. Yeah, I was coaching Little League All-Stars one time for I think for Kev's team a few years ago. And I go to this meeting, and it was held during game 4 of the finals between the Warriors and the Cavs. And this guy, he's like, and it was a 7:00 meeting, and the game just tipped off at 7. And I'm hoping the guy's going to cut the meeting short. And he goes, "Hey guys, I know the finals is on. So we're going to cut this short. We should be out of here by 9 at the latest." And I'm like, 9? The fucking game's over at that point. So he's sitting there talking for 20 minutes about what is appropriate and inappropriate coach shorts. And he's standing in this room on a carpeted floor wearing nothing but bare feet. Finally, I raised my hand and I'm like, "Excuse me, Christ, would it be okay if maybe you put on some shoes?" And it gave me this look like, if I could kick your ass right now, I would, but I can't. So I'll just sit there and kind of act kind of snotty. It was classic. But 19 rules about, you can have pleats in your shorts, but you can't have side pleats. They have to be front pleats. They can't make you're evaluating what shorts I wear. I'm a fucking 54-year-old father of 4. Who cares what shorts I wear? You just be happy I have pants on at all.
Let's go. I love it. I love it.
Anyway. Are you looking for a new book this football season? Well, BetUS is the answer. With BetUS, you get the fastest payouts in the industry and easy withdrawals, live wagering in all major games. Plus, you get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. On top of that, you also get your own personal account manager. What do? You head over to betus.com today. Use the promo code YouTube150, and you'll get 150% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Again, sign up with betus.com and use the code YouTube150 to claim that offer. BetUS called me the other day, told me tons of people are signing up from the show. So that is awesome to hear. And Chase and I are going to make a wager here on Niners Vikings. Okay. Would you rather have the Niners minus, you got to pick one of these 4, Niners minus the 5, Vikings plus the 5. Niners haven't won there, by the way, in 7 trips. Over 46 or under 46. What do you think? Do any of those 4 sides intrigue you? Niners minus the 5, Minnesota plus the 5, over or under 46. Do you have a lean in this one?
Look, I'm liking the vibe of this Niners team. I know there was a lot of vibe talk throughout training camp because things were a little bit weird without Trent Williams, without Brandon Ayuk. I thought last week against the Jets, they had one of the most impressive performances among all teams in the NFL. The way that they kicked the Jets' asses, ran the ball right down their throat, and they dominated one of the top defenses, I think, in the NFL. And they sent a statement to everybody else. No Super Bowl hangover. We're legit. We have so much talent. We're not messing around. And can you imagine if they finished some of those drives and Jake Moody didn't finish 6 of 6 on his field goals? They would have put up maybe a 50 burger against New York. I think this Niners team is different. I think they're really confident. I think they understand that time is dwindling here. They have to take advantage of this special team and trying to win a Super Bowl. I think they go on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. I know it's a short week of rest. I know that they haven't beat Minnesota since 1992, 7 straight trips, as you mentioned. I'm hammering Niners minus 5. I think they win by 7 points to a touchdown, and I think San Francisco wins this game handily.
Yeah, I like this too. I just don't believe that Sam Darnold can beat the 49ers. I really don't think that Sam Darnold can out-efficient Brock Purdy. Now, Purdy threw 2 picks there last year, but I think that will only add to his resolve to bounce back. So I like the Niners minus the 5 in this one as well. So let's go with that. Niners minus the 5. Do we want to, is there any other game from week 2 that we want to parlay that with? Is there any of the other games?
Jags -3 over the Browns. I think the Browns are a disaster. I think the Jags blew that game, obviously, last week against Miami. I think the Jags win at home by more than a field goal.
I like that too. So Jacksonville, we'll go throw Jacksonville in there. If we're looking for one more to throw in there, let me see what else. Who else is on this list that we could go with? Detroit, that's an awful lot of points. It's 8. I kind of like the Chargers -5 at Carolina. I know Chargers don't score a lot of points, but Carolina's bad.
Carolina's
I mean, the Saints are not bad, and that was the dome and everything. But the Chargers are going to win. The Chargers are, actually, I might go money line on the Chargers, but I'm not afraid of Chargers -5. I like the Chargers. I like what I saw from the Chargers. They're going to win games, and I also like Baltimore -9.5, but that's a little too big of a number.
Too many points for me.
Yeah, so let's go with that. Okay, so we have now the 3 teams, and what are we going to wager? Let's wager 10. Wager 10 on this. And we'll click that. We'll wager 10. We'll place our bets. Click there. And there you go.
Boom.
So we are set. We are now set. We can win 60. We win 60. We got Niners -5, Jags -3, Chargers -5, 10 to win 60. And we've been hot on this lately. So again, sign up at betus.com. Use the code YouTube150 to claim your offer. Once again, YouTube150 is the promo code. You get 150% sign up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. And thanks to BetUS for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Final thought. Give me your biggest concern out of week 1. The Niners dominated in so many phases of the game that I think most Niner fans don't have any concerns. I have one primary concern, but I kind of want to throw it to you first and see if you have one, Chase. What do you think? Do you have a primary concern coming out of week 1?
I mean, one of my big concerns going into the year was the offensive line, and they were tremendous in week 1.
Yeah.
I had some concerns about the Niners defensive line. They were awesome in week 1. So I just think this is a really well-rounded team. I've been saying this all off season, into training camp and in the preseason. I know you've been with me. I think this Niners team has very quality depth. For Trent Williams to say that after the game on Monday, I thought that was pretty telling. I really don't have a lot of concerns about this team. My concern in the long view, how do they beat the Kansas City Chiefs? That's really what I'm focused on for San Francisco. I think they're the top team in the NFC. And I think that they have a pretty clear gap ahead of that next best team in the conference, right over Detroit and Philadelphia. I think they're in a class of their own. So I'm interested to hear what your concern is about this Niners team. Brandon Ayuk being in shape and Trent Williams being in shape. I mean, Ayuk I thought was bad in that game against the Jets, but I have confidence that he's going to be able to turn it around.
Yeah, my only concern is the 49ers were so dominating in running the ball and winning the time of possession that we didn't really see a representative effort of their defense or get into their defensive line depth. Give you an example. Bosa played 48 snaps, Floyd 34, Collins 37, Hargrave 32. That starting 4 on the defensive front averaged 37 snaps a game. They played 68 snaps a game against Cincinnati last year. And I just think that the 49ers ran the ball so well that their defense, they really did a nice job of protecting, playing complementary football, protecting their defense, especially their line that didn't have Yatir Gross-Matos, doesn't have Drake Jackson. It's a little thin to start the year. So I just wonder, and that's when I asked Bosa about Floyd. He started talking about how this matchup's going to be a lot tougher and how the Vikings can run the ball and how it's going to be a much tougher matchup. And I just think that the way to beat the Niners is to, win the time of possession, keep their defense on the field. It didn't happen in week 1. But I just kind of feel like the 49ers lack of depth on the defensive line is a problem, and it didn't show itself in week 1 because the dominant Mason rushing effort.
Right.
And what happens if they just have an ordinary rushing effort? What happens if Bosa has to play 58 plays or 62 plays? I'm a little concerned about the depth on the D-line.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the concerns that I had, and I think that teams are going to keep that in mind when they play the Niners. At the same token, like, this Niners run defense was really good and they were bad last year. The secondary did give up some explosive plays, so I do think that's a concern. And it was so hard for the Jets offense to find a rhythm, to your point, that they just weren't on the field because this Niners team just ate up so much clock with their ability to run the football so successfully. So in a game where a team might have some running success, and they do to the Niners what the Niners did to the Jets, and they start to wear down that Niners front, and they struggle against the run, and they can't get after the quarterback, then we might see this Niners defense get exposed as far as their lack of depth. But getting Yetur Gross-Matos back is going to be huge. I think Kevin Givens is a solid backup defensive tackle. But yeah, at defensive tackle, as far as backups go, Kevin Givens, Jordan Elliott. At the edge spots, you're definitely a little bit thin there. So if you get in that game where a team's able to control the clock, run it successfully, move the chains, and keep the Niners offense off the field so that they can't find a rhythm, that could be a strategy to beat this Niners team.
Hey, man, always great to stream with you on a Friday. Another great performance as always. Enjoy the game. Have a great watch party. Everybody give Chat Sports a follow. Chase puts out incredible content. He hustles. I admire that greatly. Chase, have a phenomenal week. Enjoy the game Sunday, and we'll catch you next Friday.
Always a blast, Larry. Talk to you later.